This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Emily Brass. Janet Stewart is off. We begin with news from the group overseeing efforts to figure out whether it's feasible to search a landfill for the remains of 2 Indigenous women. It says no garbage has been dumped in that section of the landfill since June, months before officials paused operations at the site. But the family of one of the victims say they've been left in the dark for months now. CBC's Brittany Greenslade reports.
It's a vast wasteland as far as the eye can see. But for moments on Sunday, Cambria Harris got to stand on one particular spot at Prairie Green Landfill and feel connected to her mom, Morgan, once again.
Sunday was the only time I was able to get close to my mother. And that was probably, who knows, 20, 30 feet above where she's believed to be in a landfill. That's the only way I can go pay respects to my mother.
But she insists it will not be her final resting place.
Give her to me so that I can give her a proper ceremony. I can light her a proper sacred fire and do all the necessary steps to make sure that she goes to the spirit world.
That reality now feels more within reach. The Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs says it's been told no waste has been dumped in that area of interest since June, where it's believed Morgan Harris and Mercedes Myron's remains are, 2 women believed to be victims of alleged serial killer Jeremy Skibicki. Harris says that information was withheld from the family until this week.
They never said that they shut it down for that specific cell. And I think that's something that should have been announced to the public.
Officers learned the women's remains may be at the Prairie Green landfill back on June 20th, more than a month after it's believed they were buried there. Police claimed a search would be nearly impossible, saying within that time, 10,000 loads of debris and 1,500 tons of animal remains were deposited at the site. That timeline wasn't publicly released until last month, when the Premier and Mayor called for operations at the landfill to be paused.
I've since learned that there's been no, no dumping in that cell, and that's good news because, of course, there's the feasibility study and the real possibility of a search being conducted there.
While Harris says it's positive news, she questions why the family was left out of the loop.
They could have started searching. If they would have started this back in June when they knew their remains were there, they could have started searching by September, October before the ground froze over.
The search committee says it's now submitted a proposal to the federal government to fund the study to search the landfill. That's expected to be done by the end of March. Brittany Greenslade, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Winnipeg appears to be an outlier when it comes to putting a metal detector into a library. The controlled entrance at the city's main downtown branch is in response to a homicide. As CBC's Josh Crabb reports, other Canadian cities do have security in their libraries, but not to that extent.
Just hang on.
Yep. The new security measures at Millennium Library are sinking in for people who regularly visit the downtown branch. It makes Farron Cowley feel safer when he reads books on Indigenous culture, but he worries it isn't as welcoming.
I feel like a library should be like a safe haven for everybody, but it's just kind of weird having the metal detectors.
Winnipeg's flagship library reopened Monday with what the city calls interim security measures. It comes after the fatal stabbing 6 weeks ago of 28-year-old Tyree Kaye. Now, people going in have to walk through a metal detector. There are 2 uniformed police officers and additional security guards, too. CBC News contacted and heard back from public libraries in Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary, Regina, Toronto, and Hamilton. While some of their branches have security guards, their libraries haven't installed metal detectors.
It's never needed to come up.
Paul Takala has never had to respond to a homicide in his time as Hamilton's chief librarian and CEO. He says more people living in the community are dealing with addictions and mental health challenges, and the city's downtown central library feels that inside.
We have very few actual incidents where there's a physical altercation.
Library leaders from across Canada have formed a new working group on safety and security. The first meeting was held this month. The goal is to keep people who use libraries safe while making sure the spaces are welcoming and supportive of everyone.
And of course, recognizing that some of our communities are facing some challenges at the moment, particularly around mental health.
Heather Robertson with the Calgary Public Library is a member of the group. She says 5 of 21 branches in the southern Alberta city have security guards.
They greet people, they help wayfinding, they help support our staff when they're dealing with difficult situations.
She says every community is unique, so solutions to safety risks may vary. These changes in Winnipeg may not be permanent because the city is in the midst of a security review. Early results are expected within a few weeks. Josh Crabb, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The province is funding a new walk-in addictions clinic, and what makes this clinic different is that it's geared towards Indigenous people. CBC's Ian Fraze reports.
And what's your name?
Belinda.
Elder Belinda. You may have the microphone.
That's right, thank you.
An unplanned interruption at a news conference.
Anyway, I want to invite Billy up here because we're pretty cool ladies, her and I, you know? Yeah.
The elders had questions about this new addiction support for downtown Winnipeg. But first, they offered praise.
I am not going to take very long, but what I want to say today is I am so grateful for this. My spirit soars.
They're celebrating a new walk-in addictions or RAM clinic, the third in Winnipeg and the first that's Indigenous-led.
Those living with addiction can access help when they need it, where they need it, in the place that they need it. A place led by Indigenous people for Indigenous people.
Monica Sear is with the Aboriginal Health and Wellness Centre where the clinic will be. The province will spend $900,000 to run this clinic and mobile outreach starting this spring.
We have the highest concentration of Indigenous peoples in Canada, here, in this city. So will one Indigenous-led RAM clinic do it? No. But are we going to give it our best shot? Absolutely.
RAM clinics have been criticized for limited hours. The mental health minister says this clinic will prioritize late afternoons and evenings.
We anticipate that this particular RAM clinic will address some of those after-hour needs.
I almost lost 2 sons through addictions in this city who waited and waited and waited to try to get into the RAM clinics.
Elder Billy Shibler's sons have now recovered, but she still wants to make sure there is enough support for those who need.
I think what is going to be the responsibility of myself and Elder Belinda is to really keep a close watch on how this is going to develop and where we sit a year from now, and whether or not the numbers of deaths out on the street start to go down.
Sear says a supervised consumption site, something the provincial government opposes, would also help. This clinic is expecting to see 2,300 visits per year. Ian Fraze, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Mounties in western Manitoba are treating the discovery of human remains last fall as a homicide. James Vernon Giesbrecht was reported missing December 12th. The remains of the 37-year-old were found just outside Brandon in early October, but were only identified this month. Investigators worked with an anthropologist from Brandon University and the chief medical examiner to identify Giesbrecht. Anyone who may have had contact with Giesbrecht last fall is asked to get in touch with investigators. Winnipeg's police chief says the city must hire more 911 operators and dispatchers. As CBC's Bartley Kivas reports, the money to pay for the extra staff may already be at our fingertips.
Winnipeg Police Chief Danny Smythe says the city doesn't have enough people working at the 911 call center. He says staffing levels haven't kept pace with the number of calls coming in, forcing 911 staff to work so much overtime, many have simply quit.
It's pretty alarming stuff when we're losing almost 30% of the people that we train in the first year. And when I look back over 10 years, almost 40% of our staff have moved on to either other positions or left the service altogether.
Smythe says he's asked the Winnipeg Police Board for 12 more 911 operators and 6 more dispatchers. This would cost an additional $1.8 million a year. Winnipeg's Police Board chair says addressing the 911 shortage may be money well spent.
It's impacting overtime, and that's something that we'll have to address to make sure that the city's not running out of money.
The police chief has an idea where the city could find more money for 911. Manitoba could place a surcharge on mobile phone bills.
Only Ontario and Manitoba do not charge a 911 levy.
every other province adds a 911 surcharge to mobile phone bills. That charge ranges from 43 cents a month in Nova Scotia to $1.95 a month in Saskatchewan.
I don't think it's a crazy idea. Many other provinces do have that. We're really close to completing our 2023 draft budget, so it wouldn't, the discussion wouldn't happen this year.
Manitoba's PC government says it's open to the idea. Mobile phone companies won't create surcharges without a provincial request. That means for this year, it'll be up to City Hall to figure out how to fund 911. We'll find out precisely how much money the police will get this year in early February. That's when the city publishes its budget, its spending plan for the next year. Bart Lekivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
CBC News has new information about a man who was part of a group that tried to get from Manitoba into the U.S. A family from India froze to death in their attempt to cross the border. The incident last year is now part of an investigation involving 3 countries. Charges related to alleged human smuggling have been laid in the U.S. and India, but not yet in Canada. CBC's Karen Pauls has the latest.
The Patel family didn't survive walking across this snowy Manitoba field into the United States, but 7 other people in their group did. Police in 3 countries are still trying to figure out how they got there.
It's a complex investigation. Be assured we're working on it.
One of the men who made it across is now facing forgery charges in India, accused by police of using fraudulent and bogus documents to get an admission to Loyalist College in Southern Ontario. Based on that, police say he got a student visa and went to Canada with the intention of entering illegally into the United States. No one from Loyalist College would do an interview, but a spokesman sent a statement saying the individual was never registered as a student at Loyalist College, however did submit an application. Documents related to this application were shared with the RCMP, and the college is cooperating fully with the investigation.
I can confirm that we have been talking with Gujarat Police through our liaison officer, and they did request us for some documents from Loyalist College, and we have received those documents and shared them.
But Manitoba RCMP won't say if they've asked other Canadian schools for documents involving other people in the group.
It's all, part of the bigger investigation.
It's ripe for fraud.
This immigration lawyer is not surprised to hear Canada's student visa process is being allegedly used by international human smugglers.
It undermines the integrity of the whole program and the whole system, but no one wants to take the steps necessary to prevent it.
Yeah, she reviewed it.
Oh, good.
This lawyer says one of the problems is different cultural norms, standards, and expectations.
Sometimes we get an applicant who says to us, give us a document checklist and we will just get you whatever documents that you need. And we have to go back to them and say, look, this is Canada, we need genuine documents.
Police in India say they are still investigating, waiting for information from the RCMP, the Canadian Embassy, and Canadian universities. As for the man connected with Loyalist College, U.S. law enforcement authorities say he was deported, but they won't say where he was sent. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Members of the Manitoba Moose took a break from the ice this morning to help out at a Winnipeg shelter. Hockey players did everything from meal prep to sorting clothing donations at Siloam Mission. Forward Christian Reichel says it's a wonderful way to give back to the community, even if there's a bit of a learning curve for the players.
I think it's pretty good. I think I think the boys are loving it. We're trying to sort some stuff out. There was lots of asking and teaching, where that goes and where that goes, but I think we figured it out.
Reichel says the Manitoba Moose have had a fulfilling connection with Siloam Mission for years. CBC meteorologist John Sauder is here with us now. So good weather for hockey?
Yeah, good weather for hockey. Nice to see Mickey Moose in there, helping out his teammates and, cutting some veggies and that sort of thing.
Just don't get any fur on the veggies, Mickey.
True. So skies are clearing, and our temps are really starting to dip. We're going to start with the current conditions, and I'll show you how cold it's going to get tonight. Just lost another one. We made it to -10. kind of hung around -11 for part of the afternoon, and then -13, now -14. A bit of drifting snow in open areas with northeast winds right now at 22 and gusting to about 29 to 30 kilometers per hour. So you look at the satellite and radar, not a lot on radar. Just around Emerson, you see a few hours ago, a few returns there, and that's the snow that we saw here in Winnipeg, that light periods of snow I was talking about yesterday, just kind of drifting off to the south. And then the satellite imagery, that's what shows us where the cloud is covering the ground. Well, that's showing the clearing that we're experiencing right now in the Red River Valley, areas along the Trans-Canada out to the west and up to the north. That's the general trend for tonight. Clear skies, and that's why temperatures are really going to drop. So during the day, solar radiation from the sun kind of heats the ground. Even when there's snow on the ground, the darker buildings in the city, they collect some heat. And then at night, that is emitted away. But when there's cloud cover, that heat is kind of reflected back down to the ground. So we are warmer on a cloudy night, but when skies clear, there's nothing to reflect that energy back to the ground, so it just escapes into space. And that's why even in the summer, winter, no matter what season, a clearer night will be a colder night for us. We don't have that blanket of cloud over top of us. This is what it looks like on Futurecast into tomorrow morning. So about 8:30, we should be right around prepare yourself for this, -25, -26 degrees. But winds won't be all that strong, and we'll have some sunshine, at least here in the southeast and parts of the southwest, but the cloud really fills back in by about lunchtime and certainly on into the afternoon. This cloud is ahead of a next low pressure system, which by Thursday morning will be out over Saskatchewan, and the leading edge, the 2 to 4 centimeters in the afternoon, moves into Dauphin, Swan River, Grand Rapids. By the time we get to the afternoon, it's just on the doorstep here in the Red River Valley, and then that quickly moves through. What follows this system is the cold Arctic push that is going to move through on into the weekend. Expect falling temperatures on Friday and a very cold temperature both day and night on the weekend. There's the morning temperature. That's the morning low. Afternoon tomorrow, -14. Mainly cloudy already, and then northwest winds not all that strong at 10 kilometers per hour. We do get windy when the snow arrives on Thursday, so we'll see some blowing snow as well Thursday night and through the day Friday. That's a morning temperature Friday. That's the afternoon temperature. And then Saturday is the beginning of that really cold push of Arctic air that will stick around for several days.
Thanks, John.
You bet.
Fort Richmond Collegiate has opened a state-of-the-art esports facility. It's the first of its kind in Manitoba. CBC's Jim Agapito talked with Vice Principal John Manis, and the gamers about the new esports center.
I'm at Fort Richmond Collegiate in Winnipeg for the unveiling of their new esports center. Now, I know what you're thinking. Video games? That's school? Well, apparently, there's much more to it. So let's find out.
I can do this! I can do this! Anime versus living person.
Esports center in a school? There must be more to it. Why did you want to open one?
Well, number one, first and foremost, opportunities for kids. I mean, esports is huge. There's so many of our kids that go home, they play video games. And so to actually be a part of a team in a school, I think just makes sense. To me, an esports facility is the equivalent of having a gym in a school. And I'm hoping that one day it becomes the norm. I struggled with that one at first because I thought, oh my God, more screen time for our kids? Like that's the last thing they need. But these are things that these kids have strong skills in this area. And to me, having an esports kid in a school with no outlet to showcase their skills is the equivalent of having a high-level sports player in a high school also not being able to showcase those skills.
Do you play video games, John?
No, I don't.
Oh, wow. Person who supports it. I guess it is for the kids, though,
It is for the kids.
Okay,
yeah,
that's
definitely.
This is where I thrive.
Feeling like you're a part of something, does this do it for them?
I think it does. Yeah, we had a number of students who, we had the door open here while we're putting this together, and they'd poke their head in. And one of the things that I loved hearing from students was that they would say, I can't believe the school supports esports. Almost like It's unbelievable to think that a school would even consider this as something we could have here.
I'm trying, okay, I'm trying.
And why wouldn't we embrace that and work with the students and make it part of school, make it part of something that makes them want to be at school?
Ready, go!
Tell me a little bit about the game here.
This is Smash Bros. It's a fighting game. Unlike other fighting games, you can play with multiple players at the same time. It's chaotic. I love it.
It almost like makes you lose track of time because like you're having so much fun and like it's just such a good space to like spend quality time with people.
You gotta stop doing that, my guy.
It almost builds a community, being able to just have somewhere to go like during your lunch hour or something. It's either makes or breaks friendships, I find.
What is the technique here? What do you do to beat everyone? Like your friend over here, Solus.
We're not friends anymore.
You did it. So what's the secret of being good?
Smash the buttons really fast and really hard. Anyone can play it, honestly. Like you just hit buttons and you have a good time.
Okay, what are the buttons again?
X and Y are for jumping. A is just your regular punching. B is your special attack. And this little joystick you can use to also attack with high damage.
Okay, high damage attacks.
Ready, go!
No!
Good game, that was good.
Thanks for having me. This is great. I had a lot of fun. I will be back to attack all of you. So, thank you so much, guys.
Thank you so much for coming.
I'm still bitter, though. I'm still bitter.
Oh,
They're still bitter. I'm bitter.
Always next time.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his cabinet ministers were briefed today by economic experts. We'll have more on what they heard after the break. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. The economy is the #1 topic at the Liberal cabinet retreat in Hamilton, Ontario. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his ministers were briefed today by economic experts, and as CBC's David Cochrane tells us, they're bracing for a bumpy year.
Cabinet ministers arrive for a briefing on the state of the economy, knowing full well they've got a tough year ahead.
23 is a turbulent year. There's lots of uncertainty. So we're going to be watching this every step of the way as we get ready for Budget 23.
Budget 23 will need to deliver billions for a growing list of needs. New health funding for a system in crisis and in need of reform. Meaningful progress on pharmacare to satisfy the political deal with the NDP. And a clear response to massive clean tech tax incentives in the United States to keep Canada competitive.
If you go too far, too fast, the Bank of Canada is going to simply ratchet things up and make the interest rate environment more challenging. So I think that's something we ought to keep in mind for policy in 2023 when it looks at government spending and revenue.
These experts briefed the cabinet on the balancing act that's facing them, meeting that list of growing needs while warnings of a recession grow louder.
We can expect the economy to slow significantly. We can expect that the unemployment rate will rise, both here in Canada and in other jurisdictions like the US, Europe, the UK. Whether or not we'll have a hard landing is something that no one really knows.
It's a grim forecast for the year ahead for a government determined to avoid that hard landing of deep job losses and a possible recession.
There is still a lot of uncertainty in the world economy. And that means that we do need to continue to take a fiscally prudent approach.
Underscoring the challenges the government faces is the possibility of another rate hike from the Bank of Canada. The bank will reveal its latest decision tomorrow, with many experts predicting at least one more hike of a quarter point. David Cochrane, CBC News, Hamilton.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has announced plans for cross-Canada consultations with First Nations. He says he wants to see First Nations get more of the money from resource projects on their territories.
First Nations should have the right to bring home more of the benefits of their resources to their people. And so today, I'm kicking off consultations with First Nations and industry on an optional new model for First Nations that they could opt into, giving them more direct fiscal revenues from resource projects on their lands.
Poilievre says too much of that revenue is taken by so-called middle people and the federal government. There are signs Germany is ready to allow the Leopard 2 battle tanks it builds to be sent to Ukraine. Earlier today, Berlin cleared the way for Ukrainian soldiers to start training on the tanks. Now, there are reports Chancellor Olaf Scholz is expected to announce a decision early tomorrow. It all comes as fighting intensifies in eastern Ukraine, near the city that's home to Europe's largest nuclear plant. CBC's Chris Brown is there.
The area south of the city of Zaporizhia is too dangerous to stay long. Russia has intensified its attacks, even touting the beginning of a new offensive. What we saw was more destruction, some of it fresh, and shattered communities. In Orikhiv, only the most determined stay to brave the Russian artillery strikes, which this week have become worse, said these women. Our home is here. We aren't welcoming Russians as guests, she said sarcastically. It's ours, and we just can't give it up. The Russian lines are only 2 kilometers away, so driving fast lowers the chance of getting caught in shelling. Past pockmarked blast sites, craters from incoming rounds, and a ruined grain silo still smoking from a recent hit. There's only time for quick stops.
This is the town of Hulepola, and Russian shelling has absolutely demolished the municipal building. All that's left here is the sign that says, "I love Hulepola."
The Kremlin has made the unfounded claim that the whole of the Zaporizhia region belongs to Russia, but Ukraine still controls 30% of the territory. Ukraine says the renewed Russian attacks failed, but whether they're a distraction or the prelude to a new offensive isn't possible to know. But the Russian moves do make these Ukrainian exercises especially notable. We were told these soldiers are practicing for their own counteroffensive to retake occupied Russian villages near where we were. The drills involved an assault using rocket-propelled grenades and infantry fighting vehicles. Ilya, a senior soldier, says he believes Ukraine could push all of the Russian forces out of his country faster than many expect.
This year.
Yeah, I guess.
Is that possible?
Why not? So, as I guess Ukrainians demonstrated to the world that we could do things that others guess that it's impossible.
What we didn't see were advanced Western weapons, which of late have been pouring into Ukraine, although we were told an artillery brigade supporting these soldiers is using them. The next big moves of this war may come in Zaporizhia, and both Russia and Ukraine are mobilizing. Chris Brown, CBC News, in Zaporizhia.
A group of atomic scientists believes humanity is closer to the end of the world than ever before. Today, the scientists unveiled where they've set the doomsday clock.
It is now 90 seconds to midnight.
The doomsday clock has been around since 1947. It's meant to be a visual sign of how close the world is to global catastrophe. The scientists say setting the clock to the closest time to midnight ever was largely because of the nuclear threat from the war in Ukraine. Ticketmaster was in the hot seat today in Washington. A U.S. Senate committee was grilling the ticket giant after a major fiasco last fall involving Taylor Swift tickets. It's investigating whether the company holds too much power over sales in the entertainment market. CBC's Cameron McIntosh has more.
Unable to just shake it off, the anger over Ticketmaster's botched sale for Taylor Swift's next tour
Just say no to against Ticketmaster.
had Swifties and other music fans long frustrated with the ticket seller outside the U.S. Capitol.
I paid more for fees than I did for a single ticket. So I was like, no, something's wrong. Something has to change.
This hearing in the Senate Judiciary Committee will come to order.
Inside, the CFO of Ticketmaster parent Live Nation apologized for the Swift rollout.
We were then hit with 3 times the amount of bot traffic that we'd ever experienced.
Explaining the 3.5 billion Swift ticket requests was unprecedented, as were cyber attacks from ticket scalping bots bogging the website down. While some fans that did get through saw prices over $4,000 due to a pricing system that goes up with demand.
This is what led to a terrible consumer experience, which we deeply regret. We apologize to the fans.
While Swift is the catalyst, at the heart of the hearings is whether Ticketmaster and its estimated 70% market share is just too big and its fees justified, particularly when its parent also owns venues and produces tours, which critics say further consolidates control.
The competitors that are out there aren't able to even compete when it comes to the ticketing.
Among those testifying, artists who say they've lost control.
We have absolutely zero say or visibility in how much these fees will be. We find out the same way as everyone else by logging on to Ticketmaster.
Ticketmaster, meanwhile, is calling on the federal government to help it combat electronic ticket scalping, all while it's the subject of a Department of Justice antitrust investigation looking into whether the ticket seller is abusing its market position. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Washington.
A massive corporate merger in Canada has cleared another legal challenge. The Federal Court of Appeal today dismissed an effort by the Competition Bureau to block the merger of Rogers and Shaw. The $20 billion amalgamation of the telecom giants has been in the works for 2 years. The Competition Bureau was challenging a ruling by Canada's Competition Tribunal that said the merger would not lessen competition in the telecom industry. The Bureau was appealing based on legal procedural grounds rather than claiming the ruling itself was actually wrong. The merger hopes to wrap up by the end of this month. Still ahead, John Sauder's back with the Manitoba forecast. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. It's a tropical treat at Assiniboine Park Conservancy's The Leaf. It features budding strawberry guava, ripe red coffee cherries, and a collection of tall trees. You can also see Canada's tallest indoor waterfall at the Hartley and Heather Richardson Tropical Biome.
That's right. You might even see Eugenia Druid-Zobereva. She is one of the gardeners at The Leaf. CBC Manitoba community reporter Shanley Vidal was at the tropical biome and learned about Eugenia's special connection to some of the plants.
The Leaf is an amazing new attraction here in Assiniboine Park. It's all about connecting people with nature and culture. It features 4 beautiful indoor plant biomes and a display area that will change 4 or 5 times a year.
For me, the most interesting ones are the trees. So these ones are cacao trees.
Oh!
And something very interesting is that we're having...
Oh, I see them right up there.
The pods. Which is very weird. We don't know how. Maybe some pollinators came with the tree because they developed after we had them planted and everything in here. So it's not like the pod came with the tree. And we have also coffee drops. We have 6 of them. These ones.
This big thing is a coffee plant.
Yeah, those are coffee plants.
Oh, and I see there's some
fruits yeah.
on it. And okay, there's a nice cluster over there. When there's fruit growing, is it going to get harvested, or is it just going to
stay? We harvest constantly the coffee trees because the fruit of the coffee is it contains a lot of sugars, so that will it's like attracts pests. Many of these specimens, they are coming from tropical areas. The ceiba is also very important for many cultures in America. It has a very big spiritual connotation. The Tupunas peoples, they think that this is the tree of life because from a huge ceiba from the beginning of times was created the Amazon. For Mayas, they thought that 4 ceibas would hold the universe. If you ask Cubans, like, they wouldn't cut a ceiba, just in case, you know, like.
It's a wonderful new attraction here in the park and a great addition, and just another place that people can come and learn about nature here at Assiniboine Park.
So, John, a tropical setting might be nice given the forecast?
Yeah, you could feel the warmth and the humidity just watching that story. Let's get right to the temperatures because, this forecast is, going to kind of make you feel a little more like winter. Right now, minus 14 over at the airport. The Forks at minus 13, a pair of minus 16s out to the west of us. A little warmer down through Morris, Steinbach at minus 12. Temperatures really starting to dip as the skies clear, so you can see the numbers off into Ontario and up into Barons River now at minus 21. Across the north, already minus 30 in Churchill. Never really saw temperatures rising much above that in Churchill and Gillam today, and that will be the order of the next couple of days at least. A little bit warmer over here in the west, but minus 25 right now in Norway House. A little bit of snow on the way for tonight across the north end of the lakes. Tonight across into northwestern Ontario, just a chance of flurries in Dryden. Flurries overnight, about a 70% chance for Fort Frances. So quite a bit warmer. You see north of there where in Red Lake skies are clear, minus 26. Fort Frances tonight, minus 11 only. Minus 24 in Winnipeg, but morning temperatures will dip a little bit past that to about a minus 26. And then off into the southwest, we're looking at minus 19, Dauphin, minus 18, Swan River, and a low of minus 22 in the Brandon region. Across the north, where we see that a little bit of light snow overnight, the Paw and through Flin Flon, even Thompson and off into Norway House, but it'll end in the Lynn Lake area, down to minus 31, frostbite in just minutes in Churchill. So You take the temperature, combine it with the wind, and you've got that almost warning conditions in Churchill. Temperatures warmer in the west tomorrow. Generally some clearing, a little bit of morning snow across the north end of the lakes and out toward Island Lake and then across into southern Manitoba. We start the day with some sunshine and we end up with some afternoon snow in Swan River and Dauphin and cloud building in the afternoon through the rest of southern Manitoba. Temperatures pretty close to seasonal, minus 14 for a high here in Winnipeg, minus 12 in the sunshine in Kenora.
Still ahead, the Oscar nominations are out. Some Canadians made the list and some Manitobans. We'll tell you more after the break. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. The Oscar nominations are out, and some Canadians made the list for the big prize. Domi Shi got the nod for Best Animated Feature for Turning Red, with 2 nominations going to the work of another Canadian woman.
We know that we've not imagined these attacks. We know that we are bruised and terrified.
That's Women Talking, directed by Canadian Sarah Polley. The critically acclaimed film is now Oscar nominated for Best Picture and Best Adapted Screenplay. 2 Manitobans were also behind the movie. Costume designer Keita Alfred and novelist Miriam Taves. They join other box office behemoths for the biggest nominations of the award season, including Avatar, The Way of the Water by Canadian James Cameron, Banshees of Inisherin, and Everything Everywhere All at Once, which picked up the most with 11 nominations. An international film that's making a lot of noise has now picked up an Oscar nomination for Best Original Song. The epic RRR is the first all-Indian film to be nominated in that category. The song Natu Natu is up against 4 other movie tunes and has already won a Golden Globe. And as CBC movie critic Eli Glasner tells us, it's not the only thing about RRR that's breaking new ground.
Watching RRR is not your normal night at the movies. At this LA screening, the audience stormed the stage.
We just saw everyone starting to rush up, and we're like, we have to do it. It caught on. It was infectious.
This is the power of RRR, a movie smashing records and winning over audiences worldwide.
It was fascinating to see the audience love a movie in the way the Indians love it, and not just love it passively.
The story generating all this passion follows 2 freedom fighters battling the colonial powers. It comes from S.S. Rajamouli, a director known for his audacious cinema style.
Whether it's these large, oversized animals jumping right at you, or you see one man fending off like 500 bodies, it's just incredible visual storytelling.
Part of what makes RRR special is where it's from. Most Bollywood films come from Mumbai, where the language spoken is Hindi. But RRR is a Telugu language film from southern India's Tollywood region.
This Guelph student saw the film 5 times and will never forget her first experience.
But instantly, like the second it started playing, the adrenaline was up and it kind of just stayed up the whole time. My heart was beating really fast and I was like on the edge of my seat.
Now RRR's winning over fans like James Cameron and racking up wins at the Critics' Choice and Golden Globe Awards. Suggesting what's considered a worthy film could be changing.
That they can be loud and rambunctious and celebratory and perhaps bizarre and utterly unrealistic, but also deliver a story that is as truthful to the people watching it as it can be.
Oscars or not, she says RRR has already proved itself with the audience it was made for. Eli Glasner, CBC News, Toronto.
Looks incredible. So what does this mean for the Indian community in Manitoba? We reached out to Canadian filmmaker Mandeep Sodhi, and this is some of his past work. Mandeep is a screenwriter, cinematographer, and director who's worked in Indian cinema. He's home here in Winnipeg right now, working on a screenplay. We spoke earlier today. Mandeep, RRR has landed an Oscar nomination for Best Original Song. What does it mean to you that this movie from India gets that kind of recognition?
This is great, actually. And again, I repeat myself, it's great for the community. It's great for all voices in cinema because all stories are important and everybody gets to express themselves more just because they're seeing this kind of recognition for the work that India has done.
And the film actually also just won Best Original Song at the Golden Globes, beating out artists like Lady Gaga and Taylor Swift. What does that say about the power of Indian music and cinema?
I think they have been really powerful thanks to how these projects are, the streaming services like Netflix and other streaming services, which help to get more eyes on this, and then people talk about it, and then more eyes get on it, and then eventually, people realize this is art, and this is a different type of art. And it was amazing when it won the Golden Globe, and I was really excited, and I'm glad to see it got the Oscar nomination, and hopefully, it'll land an Oscar too. Who knows?
Yeah, and the cinematography looks incredible. Films being made by BIPOC filmmakers are finally getting more recognition in Hollywood. Why is that important for filmmakers like you?
I think, you see, we are having this conversation because RRR got a nomination. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be on this segment. So the more representation we have is the more representation we'll see. So it'll give power to all filmmakers from different backgrounds to be able to express their stories, knowing that all stories are important and there are people watching it and they can express themselves even more now.
Yes. How hard has it been to work in Canada as a filmmaker of color?
In the beginning, a few people told me you wouldn't amount to anything, you don't know anything, blah, 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 blah. But I always said the limitations that people have imposed on me are their own. They're not mine. So I had to keep doing what I want to do. There are a couple of companies that have supported me throughout my career, Farpoint Films, Memory Films, that have led me to express myself as a filmmaker. And I'm able to do more with my career, and I'm able to get work based on how I was able to prove myself over the years to be who I am right now, I guess.
And you are working on another script right now. Tell us what you're doing.
I made this documentary, Dad Man, and we are trying to make a second part of this, and there's a feature film that I'm writing. I love writing, I love shooting, I love creating stories. The story is about how I, as a dark-skinned child, grew up in India and how hard that was, and that has led to me becoming who I am now, you know? I am the overcompensations that I've led to till now, I guess.
Sounds interesting. So if RRR does win an Oscar, what will that mean to you and to your community?
I think it'll be huge for the community. Again, it'll push all filmmakers in India, all BIPOC filmmakers, to tell their stories the way they want to, not defining themselves by the norm, and being able to express themselves freely. And then more and more films can come which are different than what we've already seen for the past 20 years. And, you know, even the remakes over and above that.
Okay, well, we'll keep our fingers crossed. Thanks so much, Mandeep.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Still ahead, the 7-day forecast and the daily lift. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News.
Well, the next few days, some wild temperature swings. Some are all kind of seasonal, and thankfully the winds are not all that strong, with a high of only -14. And then a clipper system moves through on Thursday. With it, some wind. Expect some blowing snow as temperatures fall in the afternoon on Friday. Then check this out. Morning temperatures Saturday through Tuesday. Close to or past -30, and daytime highs only around -23 or -24 degrees through that entire stretch.
Cold start to the Lunar New Year. Year of the Rabbit celebrations are in full swing across China.
The Year of the Rabbit started Saturday and is part of the 12-year cycle of animals that appear in the Chinese zodiac. And for the record, I was born in the year of the rat, fittingly.
Oh, I'm a dog. Here's your daily lift. Some zoos are featuring the real star attraction in the fluff. Dozens of bunnies dressed in festive costumes are hopping into the hearts of visitors. People are encouraged to interact, feed, and play with them. One wildlife park has more than 300 different species, along with rabbit statues and workshops about zodiac culture. They're adorable.
They are, but...
That was CBC Winnipeg News. We'll be back at 11. Have a great evening.
Good night.